Yeah.
A post-Thanksgiving Big 12 showdown. One that could very well determine who makes the Big 12 championship. That's our game of the week. So welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, breaking down everything you need to know for the big Black Friday matchup between number 13 Iowa State and number 17 Texas. And we have been stressing the importance of this game and a handful of other Big 12 games over these last few weeks because it's very crowded up there at the top of the Big 12 standings. When you look at this, if Iowa State wins this game over the Longhorns, the Cyclones move to 7-1 in the conference and practically ensure themselves a spot in the Big 12 title game. If Texas wins this game, though, the Longhorns, Iowa State, Oklahoma, and Oklahoma State will all have 2 conference losses. That's, of course, assuming Oklahoma and Oklahoma State win this weekend, which we believe they will. Every single one of them would have 2 conference losses, which means we'd have a lot of tie-breaking scenarios we would have to work out and decide which 2 teams get in to the championship game. So this is huge. Huge, huge, huge. Texas still has a chance. Iowa State's the favorite to get to the Big 12 title game. They're our favorite to win it. But what's going to happen in Austin on Friday afternoon? When you look a little bit of history here, guys, Iowa State, they beat Texas last year. They beat the Longhorns in Ames last year, 23-21. That was just their 3rd ever win against Texas. That was just their 3rd ever win against the Longhorns. They beat them for the first time in 2010, beat them again in 2015, beat them in 2019. What will happen in 2020? If they hadn't have won in 2019, they'd be averaging about every 5 years they defeat the Longhorns. And maybe that trend will, in fact, continue now in 2020. Texas enters this game as a 2-point favorite. So almost a pick 'em, guys. I mean, Texas slightly favored, less than a field goal over the Cyclones. Home field advantage maybe having something to do with that. That spread, of course, brought to you by BETNOW.EU. Make sure to check out their link down in the description below. Use our promo code GRIDIRON over there. You get that 100% sign-up bonus, that $1,000 cash sign-up bonus. Make sure to go check it out. It's where we place our bets. We've been doing it for over a year now. BetNow, love partnering with them. And in my opinion, it's the best place to place your bets out of all the other sites out there. So BETNOW.EU, great spreads, great opportunities, great offers. Check out that link down in the description. All right, let's take some football. Let's talk some football, and let's look at the offense. We always give preference to that road team, so we're going to start with Matt Campbell's Iowa State team. You know, Iowa State is coming off their best performance of 2020 after they beat Kansas State 45-0 last week. Best performance of the year. They had 539 yards of offense. BREECE Hall hit his 8th straight game with over 100 rushing yards. He has 1,169 yards and 15 touchdowns on the year, and he's averaging 6.5 yards per carry. So the offense played lights-out football, and BREECE Hall was a major reason for that. If you ask me who the leader of this Iowa State offense is, it's BREECE Hall. I know you can talk Brock Purdy, usually think the quarterback, but I don't think Iowa State would be in the position they're in right now if they didn't have BREECE Hall. And he's a guy that is not getting nearly enough attention. Up there is one of the best running backs in the country, but he's not going to get the recognition for it. He's not getting it now, and unfortunately will not get it by season's end. But he's playing great football. Brock Purdy, he had a great game too last week against Kansas State. Just 4 incompletions on the year. He has 1,713 yards, 13 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. You know, he's been a little lackluster. He's been a little inconsistent. That's my only complaint from Purdy this year. I know that's a big one. But he hasn't played to the level that we thought he would play. Hasn't been as good as we thought he would be. But he's doing just enough. The question is, will he be consistent in this game against Texas? Following such a great win against Kansas State, such a great performance against Kansas State, can he replicate that on Friday against the Longhorns? Iowa State, in all, has done a very good job of remaining balanced. 205.3 rushing yards per game, 232.4 passing yards per game. I always say there's, defensively, if you can hold a team to under 300 total yards per game on average, you're doing really good. If you have an offense that's averaging well over 200 rushing yards per game to go along with over 200 passing yards per game, you're looking really good too. Because if you take one away, you've got the other. You don't want to be so lopsided where if you take one away, you become one-dimensional. Iowa State certainly is not that. Texas. We know all about Texas. Every time we break them down, whether it's on a prediction video or a game of the week video like this, we talk about their leader, Sam Ehlinger. The only reason Texas is ranked 17th in the country right now, the only reason Texas has remained slightly relevant, both in the Big 12 and on the national stage over these past few years, it's because of this guy. The guy that bleeds Texas orange, that burnt orange. He'll be playing in his last ever home game on Friday afternoon. That, of course, assuming he doesn't choose to come back next year. He is a senior. Everybody does get that one extra year of eligibility. It'll be interesting to see what Ehlinger chooses to do. But let's say he doesn't. This is a very emotional game for him. A guy who has 2,157 total yards on the year and 29 total touchdowns. He's also only thrown 5 interceptions. Ehlinger is efficient. He's the leading rusher for the Longhorns, obviously the leading passer, and he takes great care of the football. The Longhorns in all are averaging 40.4 points per game. The major storyline you want to watch in this one, though, is Texas will be playing in their first game in 20 days. It has been 20 days since Texas last played a game. They last played on November 7th, where they took down West Virginia. Will the Longhorns come out rusty? Will they be a little lackluster? Will they be awake? It's the day after Thanksgiving. It's an 11 a.m. kickoff. Never really bodes well. Might be a scenario where whoever starts fast in this one, whichever team starts quicker, might win because it might take a while for the other team to wake up. In Texas, coming off that long break, yeah, they've had time to prepare for Iowa State, but it's been a long time since they've hit someone else too. Very interesting storyline to watch going into this one. When you take a look at the defenses, guys, on both sides here, we'll again start with Iowa State. Cyclones have a pretty solid defense. I'd say they might own that slight defensive edge over Texas. Not by much, but slightly. Cyclones are allowing 23.4 points per game, and like their offense, their defense is coming off their best performance of the year. I don't know how much better you can get than posting a shutout. Cyclones allowed just 149 total yards to Kansas State. They allowed less than 80 rushing yards, less than 80 passing yards. Also forced 3 turnovers. I mean, best defensive performance of the year, one of the best defensive performances in the entire country last week. On the year, though, Iowa State is allowing just 104 rushing yards per game, which is not too bad. Not too bad. 104 rushing yards per game and just 333.8 total yards per game. And the storyline I want to look at here is we knew Iowa State had a pretty good rushing defense earlier in the year. They got torched by Oklahoma State in that loss to the Cowboys. But since then, they've really started to recover. And they've started to show why they originally were one of the better rushing defenses. They've allowed under 75 rushing yards in each of their last 3 games. Under 75 rushing yards in each of their last 3 games. That's extremely, extremely impressive. 104 per game on the year, less than 75 in each of the last 3. Not too shabby. And it's going to be something that you want to keep your eye on in this one with Texas. Sam Ehlinger is the leading rusher. Those count as rushing yards. They don't really have much of a running back to help out Sam Ehlinger. Keontae Ingram and Bijan Robinson. That's all they've got. That's all they've got. And neither of those 2 guys are great options. So Texas, again, might have to rely solely on Ehlinger through the air in this one, because whether it's Ehlinger trying to run by himself or handing it off to his lackluster, mediocre running backs, probably aren't going to find much success there. Texas, their defense, led by Chris Ash. Again, the former Rutgers head coach, Tom Herman, hired him to become his defensive coordinator down in Austin. They're allowing 29.7 points per game this year and 401 yards per game. So again, Iowa State owning that slight defensive edge. But ever since that quadruple overtime loss to Oklahoma, this Texas defense has been doing pretty dang good. And I know you'll say, well, what about that 7-point win over Oklahoma State? They allowed 400 yards to Spencer Sanders, 34 points to the Cowboys. Yes, they did. Texas still came away with the win. They still wreaked havoc in the backfield, tons of sacks on Sanders, and they forced 4 turnovers. So yeah, wasn't necessarily pretty, but the defense was the reason that Texas won that game. You look at Texas too. They're allowing 117.9 rushing yards per game this year. So not a big difference there between Iowa State's rushing defense and Texas's rushing defense. But the Longhorns' rushing defense is the one that's going to be more important here, because Texas won't be able to run the ball that effectively. At least I don't think so. We know that Iowa State can. When you've got a guy like BREECE Hall, you're going to use him as much as possible. And he's been effective. He's looking to hit his 9th straight game with at least 100 rushing yards. But after looking at those numbers, like Iowa State, Texas' rushing defense is getting hot. They've allowed under 70 rushing yards in 2 of their last 3 games. So again, very impressive. They're getting hot at the right time. The only concern for me is the secondary. Texas allows 283.1 passing yards per game. That has got to get better. Brock Purdy, if he plays like he did last week against Kansas State, Iowa State wins comfortably. If he's inconsistent, just ever so slightly, Texas absolutely has a chance. So some big defensive numbers there, some big defensive stats and keys in a way that you want to look at here. But I want to break down the keys a little bit deeper. I want to look at those a little bit closer. Let's start with Iowa State. This game was so big for them. 13th team in the country. A win here, yeah, it practically ensures themselves a spot in the Big 12 title game, but might propel them in the top 10 as well. Maybe just right on the outside looking in. Iowa State, their first key is what we just mentioned. Which Brock Purdy is going to show up. So I guess your key would be get consistent play out of Brock Purdy. The job against Kansas State, where he went 16 for 20, 236 yards, and 3 touchdowns, that was an unbelievable performance. I mean, you can't ask for anything better from your quarterback. Will that Brock Purdy show up? Or will the Brock Purdy that played against Baylor show up? Against the Bears, where Iowa State only won 38-31, Purdy went for just 164 yards, 3 touchdowns, but also 3 interceptions. If he plays like he did against Baylor, Texas wins, no doubt about it. If he plays like he did against Kansas State, Iowa State, they're not a lock to win, but I think they would be favored. That's your first key. Got to get consistent play out of Brock Purdy. Good play out of Brock Purdy. The second key for Iowa State is slow down Sam Ehlinger. Slow down Sam Ehlinger. And that's going to be our first key for Texas here in a second. But again, we have said so many times when we analyze Texas, he is the Longhorns offense. Sam Ehlinger is Texas. If you take him away, they have nobody. And I know what you might say. If you do that to any team, you take away the quarterback, they're going to have nobody. It's not true. You don't want to see Brock Purdy lead the game. But if you take him away, BREECE Hall can take over. There are plenty of other teams out there where if you take away their starting quarterback, next man up mentality, they're going to be just fine. Whether it's their running back stepping up, their backup quarterback stepping up, they can do it. Texas can't. And I'm not saying Sam Ehlinger has to get hurt in this game, but Iowa State had to find a way to almost make him a non-factor. Pressure him, force him into mistakes. Do not allow him to use his legs. Do not allow him to run. Keep him in the pocket. That's what Iowa State needs to do. Texas, what do they need to do? Remember at the beginning of the video, we said they haven't played in 20 days, almost 3 weeks. They haven't played a football game. So what Texas needs to do is they need to start fast. Knock off all the rust on Thanksgiving night because you cannot afford a slow start on Friday morning. 11 o'clock kickoff, remember that. They have to be ready to go. You have to start fast. If Iowa State comes out there and jumps out to, I would say, a 14-0 lead, turn your TV off, Texas will lose. That might sound bold, it might sound ridiculous, but if Iowa State starts fast, very much like they did against Kansas State, Texas will lose. You cannot afford to start slow and dig yourself a hole early in this game against the Cyclones. Additionally, for Texas, I have 3 keys for them. Second one, stop BREECE Hall. I mean, how common sense is that? The guy's looking to make his 9th straight game with 100 rushing yards. I mean, that's obvious. Shut him down. You shut him down, you force Purdy to win, your chances to win increase. If you don't, and BREECE Hall runs rampant like he has all year long, you're in trouble. And I think the key number is 125. If you can hold BREECE Hall to 125 rushing yards or less, I think you win this game. I really do. Hold him to 125 rushing yards or less, and you win. So yeah, let them go over 100, but not much more than that. And then finally, for Texas, is there anyone out there that can help Sam Ehlinger? Is there anyone else that can take care of business on the offensive side of the ball? Listen to this. All year long, Texas has played, 7 games, 8 games? Only 2 players have rushed for 100 yards in a single game. One of those was Sam Ehlinger. The other was Bijan Robinson against West Virginia. 2 players have rushed for 100 yards this season for Texas. One of them was their quarterback. Sam Ehlinger has accounted for at least 56% of Texas's total yards in their last 3 games. 56%. He accounted for 56%. He accounted for 61% in another game and 75% in the other. It's all Sam Ehlinger all the time. You take him out, you slow him down, which is our key for Iowa State. Texas has no one else to pick up the slack. No one else is there to help pick up the slack. So that's what they have to do. Texas, you've got to find someone else to help you out. Robinson, Ingram, some wide receivers that maybe can actually take a screen pass and get some yards out of it. Something that requires minimal effort from Sam Ehlinger or even their defense, dare I say. The defense helped them out so well. If you give Sam Ehlinger a short field, he doesn't have to do as much. Someone or some side of the ball have got to help Sam Ehlinger in this game. If they don't, and they rely on him to account for against 75% of the yards in one game, I don't think Texas wins this game. I really don't. So that's another key for the Longhorns here. What is going to happen in Austin on Friday? Friday morning, 11 o'clock a.m. kickoff, day after Thanksgiving. Huge Big 12 title showdowns. I mean, that was our projection, was Iowa State, Texas. Unfortunately, because of the way the standings have worked out, that's not going to happen this time around. I think, your best bet to see Iowa State, Texas face off again would be for Texas to win this game. And even then, I don't think it would happen. So what's going to happen here? Will Texas's Big 12 title hopes come to an end? Or will they create chaos in the Big 12? I'm going with chaos. I am picking chaos, which means I have Texas winning this game on Friday. This is a battle, guys, between 2 very, very even teams. You look at the numbers. Only a half yard separates Texas and Iowa State when it comes to total yards per game. Only a half yard separates them offensively when it comes to total yards per game. Iowa State, we mentioned, owns that slight edge defensively. I think Texas makes up for that with their home field advantage. I mean, this is an even matchup, 2 even teams, and one that I think is going to be relatively close. I would expect nothing less. But the game is in Austin. It is senior night. I don't think Ehlinger comes back next year, so I don't think he leaves Austin with a loss. I don't think he lets his last game, in a game that's so big as this, I don't think he lets it wind up as a loss. I think Texas comes in rested, and I think their defense plays better than we expect. They're rested, they're prepared, and their defense has been improving every week since that game against Oklahoma. And my final point is this too. I just don't think Iowa State can replicate the success they had last week against Kansas State. Texas is not Kansas State. The game is not in Ames. Kansas State was beat up. Nothing to take away from Iowa State. Nothing at all. One of the best performances I've seen in a long time. But I don't think they can put up those type of numbers and have that type of play for the second week in a row. And in doing so, Texas will win this game in Austin. They will create chaos in the Big 12. And it will take us another week or 2 to finally sort out which 2 teams will meet in the Big 12 championship later on in December. But this is a must-see game, guys. You've got football on Thanksgiving night, football Thanksgiving Day. You wake up Friday, you're full, heat yourself up some leftovers, plop down in front of the TV, and check out this top 20 Big 12 showdown, one that I promise you will not want to miss. So guys, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and make sure to check out everything down in that description below. Our newsletter, our expert picks, which is our spread picks for all of our games this week, and as it had been for all year. All those things down in the description below, along with the BETNOW link like we mentioned, and our Patreon account as well. If you love college football, everything down in the description is for you, and this place, the Gridiron Expert, is for you. So make sure to check out everything right down there in the description. And once again, guys, thank you so much for watching. Go out there, have a great and safe Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving from all of us here at the Gridiron Expert to you. Go out there, enjoy it, and we will see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.